She looked at my old clothes. She looked at my small house. She called me a broke old man. I smiled. She thought she knew everything about Walter Hargrove. She never found the $61 million. And my attorney? He was already waiting. The smile nobody understood. The day my son brought Elena home for the first time, I was sitting in my garden wearing my oldest pair of trousers and a faded shirt with a small paint stain near the collar. I remember it clearly. It was a Sunday afternoon in late September, the kind of day where the light sits low and golden and everything feels unhurried. I was pruning my roses, the way I did every Sunday, radio playing softly on the porch, a half-finished cup of tea going cold on the garden wall beside me. Marcus came through the side gate with her. She was beautiful. I will say that honestly and without bitterness, Elena was genuinely, strikingly beautiful. Dark hair, sharp eyes, the kind of posture that says I know exactly how I look and I want you to know it too. She was wearing clothes that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, and she was looking at my garden, at my modest house, at my old trousers, at my cold tea, with an expression she thought she was hiding. She wasn't hiding it. I've been reading people for 78 years. You get good at it. Dad, Marcus said, smiling wide, nervous in the way young men are nervous when they bring someone home and they care too much about the outcome. This is Elena. Elena, this is my father, Walter. Elena extended her hand. Her smile was perfect. Practiced. It's so lovely to meet you, Walter, she said. Marcus talks about you constantly. Does he? I said, shaking her hand. Good things, I hope. Of course. She looked around the garden. What a charming little place. Charming little place. I smiled at her. Not a polite smile. Not a grandfather meeting his son's girlfriend smile. A real, quiet, deep smile, the kind that comes from knowing something the other person doesn't know yet. She didn't notice. People like Elena rarely notice smiles like that. They're too busy looking at the surface of things to see what's underneath. What Marcus never told her. My son is a good man. I want to be clear about that. Marcus grew up watching me drive old cars and shop at discount stores and repair things instead of replacing them. He grew up thinking we were comfortable, not wealthy, not struggling, just comfortable. A retired engineer with a pension, a small house, a rose garden. That was exactly what I wanted him to think. Not because I didn't trust my son. But because I had watched too many people, good people, people with genuine hearts, get slowly hollowed out by the knowledge of inherited wealth. It changes how you move through the world. It changes what you fight for, what you settle for, what you believe you deserve. I wanted Marcus to build his own life on his own foundation. And he had. He was a structural engineer, 34 years old, successful, self-made in every way that mattered. He had bought his own apartment, built his own career, never once asked me for anything beyond advice. I was proud of him in a way I had never found the right words for. What Marcus didn't know. What nobody knew except my attorney and one very discreet bank manager was that his father was not a retired engineer living on a pension. His father was worth $61 million. Built over 50 years of quiet, disciplined, almost invisible investing. The same philosophy I had followed my entire life: live small, think long, say nothing, wait. The money sat in accounts and holdings and a carefully managed portfolio that had been growing for decades like a garden nobody else could see. I had planned to tell Marcus when the time was right. Then Elena arrived. The dinner. 3 weeks after that first meeting in the garden, Elena and Marcus came for dinner. I cooked myself simple food, nothing impressive. Elena arrived in another expensive outfit, looked at my kitchen the way you look at something slightly disappointing, and spent most of the evening asking Marcus questions about his career, his savings, his 5-year plan. She asked me exactly 2 questions the entire evening. The first, did you ever travel, Walter? Before you retired? The second, asked while glancing at a small crack in my kitchen ceiling, have you ever thought about moving somewhere newer? After dinner, while Marcus was washing up, Elena excused herself to use the bathroom. She was gone for a few minutes. When she came back, her eyes were slightly different, sharper, like someone who has been doing quiet calculations. I had noticed, earlier that week, that my study door had been disturbed. Not broken into. Just touched. The kind of thing most people wouldn't notice. I noticed. She had been looking for something. Evidence of money, or evidence of the lack of it. She had found my old files, my modest bank statements, the ones I kept visible specifically for reasons I had been planning for longer than Elena had been in my son's life. Because here is the thing about people who marry for money. They always do their research. They check. They verify. They make sure the investment is sound before they commit. Elena had checked. She had found exactly what I wanted her to find. She thought she knew everything about Walter Hargrove. She knew nothing. I refilled her wineglass and smiled at her across the dinner table. She smiled back, warm, comfortable, satisfied. Charming little place, she had called it. I thought about the $61 million sitting quietly in the dark. I thought about my attorney's phone number saved in my contacts under the name Rose Supplier. I thought about the document I had asked him to prepare 6 months ago, before Elena, before any of this. Because I had learned, in 78 years of living, that the best time to prepare for something is long before you need it. And I smiled again. The proposal. Marcus proposed to Elena on a Friday evening in November. He called me that same night, voice higher than usual, words tumbling over each other the way they used to when he was 8 years old and excited about something. He had taken her to the restaurant where they'd had their first date, gotten down on one knee, and she had said yes before he finished the sentence. "Dad," she cried, he said. Actually cried. I've never seen her cry before. "That's wonderful, son," I said. And I meant part of it. The part about Marcus being happy, that was real. That mattered to me more than anything else in this story. My son was genuinely, completely in love. That wasn't his fault. That was Elena's talent. After I hung up, I sat in my garden in the November cold for a long time. Then I called my attorney. "It's time," I said. "Everything is ready," he said. "Whenever you are." I looked at my roses, bare now, stripped back for winter, just thin dark branches against the gray evening sky. Most people think roses are dead in winter. They're not. They're gathering. Building quietly underground where nobody can see. "Not yet," I said. "But soon." The engagement party. Elena's parents hosted the engagement party at their house across town. I had met them once before, briefly, at a Sunday lunch Marcus had organized 2 months earlier. Her father, Dominic, was a man who wore his ambition on the outside, loud and unsubtle. Her mother, Patricia, had the same practiced warmth as her daughter, beautiful surface, careful eyes. They had asked Marcus, very casually, very early in the relationship, about his father's financial situation. Marcus had told them what he knew: retired engineer, modest pension, small house. I know this because Marcus mentioned it to me himself, laughing slightly, saying Elena's parents seemed unusually interested in background details. I had laughed too. I arrived at the engagement party alone, in my 12-year-old car, wearing a clean but unremarkable suit. Elena's house was large, bright, full of people holding expensive wine and talking loudly about nothing. The moment I walked in, I felt the temperature of the room shift slightly, not dramatically, just that small social recalibration that happens when someone arrives who doesn't quite fit the aesthetic. Dominic shook my hand firmly. Patricia kissed my cheek and called me Walter, darling, in a voice that managed to be simultaneously warm and dismissive. Elena floated over in a white dress, radiant, diamond ring catching the light. She hugged me, a real hug, I noticed. Comfortable. Confident. The hug of a woman who had done her research and made her decision and was no longer uncertain about anything. "Walter," she said, holding my hands and looking at me with those sharp, beautiful eyes. "I am so happy to officially be joining your family." "As am I," I said. Then quietly, just to me, with a small laugh that was meant to sound affectionate, she said, "I told Marcus I don't care about money." I just care about him. I hope you know that. Unprompted. Unsolicited. I looked at her for a moment. I know, I said simply. She smiled and moved away to greet someone else. I found a quiet corner, accepted a glass of sparkling water from a passing waiter, and watched the room. Marcus was across the party, laughing with Elena's cousins, completely and entirely happy. My chest hurt looking at him, not from anger, but from something more complicated. The particular pain of knowing something your child doesn't know and understanding that protecting them and preparing them are not always the same thing. Dominic appeared at my elbow. Quite a girl, our Elena, he said, not looking at me, watching the room with proprietorial satisfaction. Quite, I agreed. Marcus is a good man, Dominic said. Solid career. Good head on his shoulders. A pause, carefully casual. I imagine you must be proud. Building something from nothing. Building something from nothing. The phrase of a man doing a final check on an investment. Very proud, I said. Dominic nodded slowly. Then, still not looking at me, Elena's always been practical. She understands that love is important, but stability matters too. Foundation. You understand. Completely, I said. He finally looked at me, searching, brief. Whatever he found seemed to satisfy him. He patted my shoulder once and moved away. I sipped my water. Foundation. He had used that word. I thought about $61 million sitting in the dark. I thought about the document my attorney had prepared. I thought about the conversation I had scheduled for next week, not with Marcus, not yet, but with a private investigator I had hired 3 weeks ago to look into Elena's history. Because here is what I had learned in 78 years. People who are hiding something always look for what you are hiding first. It makes them feel safe. Balanced. Like the playing field is even. Elena had found my modest bank statements and felt safe. She didn't know I had found something too. The investigator's preliminary report was sitting in my study at home. I hadn't opened it yet. I wanted to wait to sit with the engagement party, to watch Elena move through the room, to be absolutely certain before I took the next step. Because what I was planning wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was something more careful than revenge. It was architecture. The report. I read it that night when I got home. Sitting at my grandfather's desk, the same desk I had sat at for 50 years, the same lamp, the same cup of tea, I opened the envelope and read every page carefully. Elena Vasquez. 31 years old. Before Marcus, there had been one previous serious relationship, a man named Theodore Harland, 54 years old, considerably wealthy. They had dated for 14 months. 3 weeks before Theodore proposed, Elena had ended the relationship. The timing, according to people the investigator had spoken to, had coincided precisely with Theodore's business taking a significant financial loss. Before Theodore, a pattern. Not dramatic, not criminal. Just a quiet, consistent pattern of relationships with financially comfortable men, each ending when the financial picture changed or failed to develop in the expected direction. I put the report down. I sat for a long time in the quiet house. I wasn't angry. Anger is for people who are surprised. I was not surprised. I was sad, genuinely, deeply sad, for Marcus. For the version of his life he was currently living, full and bright and completely constructed on a foundation he couldn't see. I picked up my phone and called my attorney. I've read the report, I said. And? Begin phase 2, I said quietly. Slowly. Carefully. Nothing that touches Marcus directly. Not yet. Understood. Timeline? I looked out the dark window at my garden. Bare branches. Winter roses gathering in the dark. She wants a spring wedding, I said. We have time. The day the smile made sense. February. The wedding was set for the 14th of April. Elena had planned everything with the precision of a military operation: venue, flowers, catering, photography, a string quartet for the ceremony, and a DJ for the reception. The budget was, by any reasonable measure, extraordinary. Marcus had told me the number over coffee one Saturday morning with the slightly dazed expression of a man who has agreed to something before fully processing it. I had nodded calmly and said nothing. What I was thinking was, she is spending confidently. That means she is certain. That means she hasn't had a single doubt. Good. Certainty makes people careless. Phase 2 had been running quietly for 6 weeks by then. My attorney, a careful, brilliant man named Samuel Park who had worked with me for 22 years and understood both the law and human nature with equal precision, had been building something in the background. Not a trap. Not a trick. A mirror. The idea was simple. Elena had constructed a false image of Walter Hargrove, poor, irrelevant, a minor character in the financial story she was writing. We were going to let her keep that image right up until the moment it was more useful to remove it. Every week Samuel called me with updates. Every week I pruned my roses, drank my tea, and waited. Patience is not passive. Patience is the most aggressive thing in the world when you understand how to use it. March. The lunch. 3 weeks before the wedding, Elena asked me to lunch. Just the two of us, no Marcus. She framed it as wanting to connect, to build a real relationship with her future father-in-law, to start the marriage on strong family foundations. Her words were warm, genuine sounding, carefully chosen. I accepted immediately. We met at a restaurant she selected, expensive, beautiful, the kind of place where the menu has no prices. She arrived 5 minutes late, which I noted was deliberate. A small power move. She wanted to be the one who was waited for. She looked radiant. Happy. 3 weeks from her wedding, everything going according to plan. We ordered. We talked. She asked me about my life, my career, my retirement, my health, with the attentive interest of someone who has studied how to appear caring. She was good at it. Genuinely good. Then, over dessert, she leaned forward slightly and said, "Walter, I want to talk about something a little sensitive. I hope that's okay." "Of course," I said. "Marcus and I have been discussing our financial future," she said carefully. "Long-term planning. Investments. And I want to make sure that you're taken care of too. That if anything ever happened, if you ever needed support," she paused, the picture of delicate concern, "we would be there for you. Marcus would want that. And so would I." I looked at her across the table. She was offering me a safety net. Positioning herself as generous, caring, forward-thinking. Establishing, gently, deniably, that Walter Hargrove was someone who might eventually need financial support. Planting that seed now so it would be established before the wedding, before any inheritance conversations, before anything inconvenient emerged. It was actually very well executed. "That's very thoughtful, Elena," I said. She smiled. Warm, relieved, satisfied. I smiled back. That same smile she had seen in the garden on the very first day. The one she had never understood. April, 4 days before the wedding. Samuel called me on a Monday morning. "Everything is in place," he said. "The documentation is complete. The transfers are arranged. The notifications are scheduled." A pause. "Walter, are you absolutely certain? Once we move, it cannot be undone." I was standing in my garden. Early April light, thin and new. My roses were coming back, small green shoots pushing through the bare branches, tender and determined, exactly on schedule. "I'm certain," I said. "And Marcus?" "I'm telling him tonight," I said. "He hears it from me first. Everything. The full truth." A silence. Then Samuel said, quietly, "Edward would have done the same thing." He meant my own father. A man who had also believed in the long game, in patience, in building things that outlasted the moment. I know, I said. I went inside and called my son. The conversation with Marcus. He came over that evening. I made tea. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we had sat 1,000 times over 34 years, doing homework, talking about life, arguing about football, sitting in comfortable silence. I told him everything. All of it. The 61 million. The investments. The decades of quiet building. The reason I had kept it from him, not manipulation, not distrust, but love. The particular love of a father who wanted his son to be real, to be built from genuine material, to know his own value independent of inherited wealth. Marcus was quiet for a long time after I finished. "Why are you telling me now?" he said finally. His voice was careful. He was a smart man. He already suspected the answer. "Because you deserve to know before your wedding," I said. "And because there are things about Elena that you also deserve to know." I put the investigator's report on the table between us. He didn't pick it up immediately. He looked at it. Then he looked at me. "How long have you known?" he asked. "I suspected from the first day," I said. "I confirmed it in November. 5 months ago." His jaw was tight. "I needed to be certain," I said. "I needed it to be undeniable. Not a feeling, not a suspicion, proof. Because you love her, Marcus, and you deserved proof before I asked you to look at her differently." He picked up the report. He read it slowly. Every page. I sat with him and said nothing. Sometimes the most important thing a father can do is simply stay in the room. When he finished, he put it down and looked at the wall for a long time. "Theodore Harland," he said quietly. "Yes." "The timing." "Yes." Another long silence. When he finally looked at me, his eyes were wet, not crying, but close. The expression of a man feeling something too large to process quickly. "What do I do?" he said. "That is entirely your decision," I said. "I will support whatever you choose. But I wanted you to have the truth. All of it. Before you stood in front of everyone and made a permanent promise." He nodded slowly. He left around midnight. I sat in my kitchen alone and hoped I had done the right thing. You never fully know with these things. Parenthood is mostly making the best decision available with the information you have and then living with the uncertainty. April. The wedding day. The wedding did not happen. Marcus called Elena 2 days before the 14th. I don't know exactly what he said. He told me afterward that he had been calm, direct, and that he had not shown her the report. He had simply told her that he knew. That he had known for some time. And that he couldn't marry someone whose reasons he couldn't trust. Elena, according to Marcus, had not cried this time. She had gone very still. Very quiet. And then she had asked, in a completely different voice than the one Marcus had fallen in love with, flat, precise, stripped of all performance, "How did you find out?" Marcus had said, "My father." She hadn't responded. She had simply ended the call. Afterwards. The call started the next day. Elena's mother. Elena's father, Dominic, who had spoken to me about foundation at the engagement party, now leaving voicemails in a voice several registers higher than his usual register. Elena herself called once and left no message. I answered none of them. 3 weeks after the cancelled wedding, I did something I had been planning for a long time. I transferred a significant, carefully chosen amount into a trust fund in Marcus's name, not everything, not immediately, but enough to be meaningful, enough to be real. I sat with him at the kitchen table and explained the full structure of what I had built. We spent 4 hours going through it together. He asked good questions. Careful questions. The questions of a man who had built his own foundation and understood what foundations were for. At the end he looked at me with an expression I will remember for whatever time I have left. "You spent 50 years building this," he said. "And you almost gave it away to protect me from knowing about it." "Not almost," I said. Completely willingly. He was quiet. Why didn't you just tell me earlier? About Elena? I thought about the garden. The bare winter branches. The patience of roses. Because the most important lessons, I said, are the ones you almost don't survive. The close ones. The ones that get near enough to leave a mark. I paused. You'll be more careful now. Not suspicious, careful. That's different. That's valuable. He nodded slowly. Then he reached across the kitchen table and gripped my hand once, firm, brief, the handshake of one grown man to another, and said, "Thank you, Dad." 2 words. The return on 50 years of patience. The garden. That spring, my roses came back better than ever. I don't know if that means anything. Probably it doesn't. Probably it's just biology, the cold winter, the careful pruning, the long quiet months of gathering strength underground. But I thought about it sometimes, standing in the morning light between those roses, tea going cold on the wall beside me. Elena had called me a broke old man. She had looked at my garden and seen a charming little place. She had looked at my old trousers and my faded shirt and my 12-year-old car and seen the full picture of Walter Hargrove. She had seen absolutely nothing. And I had smiled. Not because I was cruel. Not because I was proud. Because I had learned something in 78 years that no amount of money can teach you and no amount of beauty can replace. The most dangerous person in any room is the one who has nothing to prove. I refilled my tea. I went back to my roses. Clapperboard the end. She married for money. She just picked the wrong poor man. Walter Hargrove, 78-inch Elena counted my money. She found nothing. Because the most dangerous person in any room is the one who has nothing to prove. Walter smiled for 2 years. Now you know why. Pause, silence, then. Subscribe. The next story is even better.